entertain that?
All on the floor.
You ready?
A lot of grace. Exactly. I'll have to write a check. Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes are adopted. Ms. Standridge, FY '23 General Budget Revision number 6, please.
As we have all been saying, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy to be back. This is going well so far, and I think that you'll get a nice representation of where we're sitting for some good news coming up in the future also. But we'll start with the general fund budget revision, as Mr. Busby just mentioned. This is a budget revision request from the police department to use $23,495 from their training and technology diversion funding to be able to purchase equipment and software for their cyber intelligence unit.
All right. Any questions? Chief?
Yeah, I was like, man, no questions at all. This is some software that the state used to give us. They no longer do it, but it's vital to our operations. So we have to have it. It is a budgeted item.
Okay. Magic words, any other questions?
No, sir. So
Your
moved.
motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approved. Now, I believe you have some good news for us, Mayor.
Yes, sir, and sometimes I hear that, or I've been told they can't hear me from where I sit, so I thought today, with it being really good news, I'd use the podium. So as you will see, the way this presentation's set up is I'm here to deliver the good news, and Ms. Standridge is here to deliver the bad news. So actually, there's actually no bad news, because she's doing the expenditure side. But in all seriousness, overall and comprehensively, you will see that we've had a historic year for the city's budget. It will most likely, although we're not at the finished audit yet, the largest budget surplus in the city's history. And I'm certainly very proud of that. Last year was our largest, and this year will be even larger. And so the city continues to be financially strong and healthy, and I think that will be affirmed through this revenue report. So let me first begin by the general fund. First, just looking at, you know this, but most of our constituents are not aware of this. It's just what makes up our major revenues. Sales tax represents 33.8%, and county sales tax represents 15.5%. So nearly 50% of the city's general fund revenues come from sales taxes, and it's a great indicator of how your economy is doing. When you layer in privilege license or business license, you really begin to see that 66%, nearly 67% of our entire budget is made up by the reflection of the economy itself. So this budget surplus is also an indication that our economy continues to grow. Now, certainly, I don't think any of us this year expect to see the type of revenue growth that we've had year over year. A large portion, though, of our budget surplus is not just economic growth, it's conservative budgeting. It's being realistic in what we set our revenues at and then collecting above what we have budgeted. In terms of overall general fund revenues, we were 113% over budget, a little over $15 million, $15.2 million above budget. As I mentioned earlier, sales tax is our greatest driver, and you can see there that $45.8 million worth of sales tax, city sales tax collections for the city of Tuscaloosa, 111% over budget. Our portion of the use tax, 124%. SSUT, which again, there's a lot of discussion about, most known as the internet sales tax, again, continues to grow. We certainly don't believe that is our proportionate share of revenues, but it still is a revenue line item that continues to grow. Property tax, which is going to be our most consistent tax. It's not going to be one that's going to go through the V shape that you see from time to time. 113% of budget. Rental tangible tax, 106% of budget. Lodging tax, which again is another good indicator of your economy. Now, sometimes this number can ebb and flow based off the number of home football games you might have in the season. We certainly saw dips, as you can see through the line chart, during the COVID years. But this year, record number within lodging tax for the city of Tuscaloosa. This also reflects a couple of other things. The new hotels that come online, and certainly pricing increases as well, which has helped tremendously. The rental tax or dwelling tax at 111% of budget, and this is the 1%, and Carly, correct me if I'm wrong, it is not the 3% that is on your mega student apartments. The reason why it's shaped stair-stepped that way is we collect on a quarterly basis for the most part.
Why is it not that 3%? Is that not fully kicked in or what?
So because we set aside the 3% for that public safety fund to be able to pay for the pay
Well,
plan,
we still count it as revenue coming in, right?
it's not discretionary revenue. You've already set it aside. These are all major discretionary revenues that the mayor's going over. These are all items that you're gonna have play with in future budgeting cycles and be able to plan and do strategic operations with into the future. That one's already set aside and it's already earmarked for certain specific operations. These are the ones that you can plan with into fiscal '24.
But if you want, we can give you a breakdown of the
No,
collection.
no, I was just, my curiosity poked about why that 3% didn't show, and I don't have any problem if conceptually we're dealing with only discretionary, but as long as that's consistent throughout all of these revenues.
It's gonna mirror most likely what you see with the 1%, but we can give you that number, and that's, we can add it to future presentations.
On good news, I don't need to drill deeper. I'm good.
It's,
I
No.
told Carly, if this is as good as it sounds, I'll shut up and color for a while.
short-term rental, I still think we were at 282% of budget. I still think there's a lot of meat on this bone, that we do not collect yet, but I think that will continue. As we become more sophisticated, as it becomes more, regulated, you will see that number continue to increase.
I think code enforcement discovered a illegal short-term rental in my district recently.
Your investment into the expansion of code enforcement is gonna pay dividends in so many ways.
Mayor, is the short-term rental tax the same as a long-term rental?
It's actually higher, because it's at 11%.
We pay
lodging tax,
11.5%, I think.
Lodging tax in.
Short-term
It's a lodging tax that's only, that's assigned to only the ones that are designated as short-term rentals.
Gotcha.
That's based on days, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's actually, and that was done intentionally 5 or 6 years ago,
Yeah.
To, in some ways, almost discourage the practice, but it hasn't had any impact.
It's enhanced, huh?
Yeah, there's and trust me, from the short-term rental folks, that you've heard their arguments. Well, long-term rental is 1%. You're charging us at 11%. But what we've done is said, well, the short-term rental is more like a hotel, which is taxed at 15% with 11% that goes to the city of Tuscaloosa.
Gotcha.
Business license, again, and that is always a reflection into the past, but you see 111% of budget. Building permits, and this is one that I think if you want to get a glimpse of maybe what the future may hold, we only made 84% of budget. Now, building permits, and you've heard me talk about this, sometimes somebody will come in on September 15th and it'll help your budget that year, but it'll hurt your budget the next year. But you've seen this year to year a slowdown in overall building permits. I think it's something we need to keep our eyes on. I think in my opinion, and I meet monthly with local businesses, Business Advisory Committee, it's not that the capital has dried up in what they're seeing, it's just everyone's cautious right now. And I think you'll probably continue to see that. It would be my guess. And of
Does
course,
this include permits not only on commercial capital
residential.
projects, but residential as well?
Mhm.
And honestly, and Ms. Kreitz isn't in here to kind of make commentary, the residential is really kind of what keeps it as high as it is. The commercial ones are just the bigger chunks at the timing that the mayor talks about. The bigger chunks that kind of come in maybe in September, that'll help your budget out this year, but kind of hurt you next year because you won't get that big spike. The residential ones are kind of what keep us even keel, at least still having some kind of revenue base.
County sales tax continues to outpace 112% of budget, and this is not only good in terms of our share of the county tax, it certainly helps TCRIC. It also helps our school system. Our school system gets 20% of the 3-cent countywide sales tax, so it's certainly good for them as well. Switching gears to Elevate, no different. Its revenues come from sales tax and use tax. This year we were 2.2 million above budget. So we were at 102% of budget revenues. You can see here the revenue trend line for yourself, and then on use tax as well.
Carly, how could Elevate taxes be 102% and our sales taxes be at 111%?
During the year, we actually increased we adjusted that amount during the year as we saw revenues come in. And
We adjusted which amount? The Elevate revenue projection?
Yes, the Elevate revenue projection.
That's a very extremely astute question because we are a little bit more aggressive on the Elevate side due to the activity in the fund. The general fund side of things, we kind of set that budget, like the mayor mentioned, we are extremely conservative on that one. So we set the budget in, August, September with what we project from June the prior year. And we just kind of let it ride. Whatever we collect over, we just kind of let it accumulate, but we don't necessarily use it for operations because we're trying to create a surplus transfer for you guys to have a capital project possibility in the following year. Elevate's different. Like we're not trying to accumulate to create a capital project push on a different year. We have a 10-year plan that we're trying to fund with Elevate. So we just continually update it as we need to.
So when we see a comparison expressed as a percent of what we budgeted, that doesn't always mean from what we budgeted on September 30th at the beginning of the year, but in some cases it includes where we moved the peg up or down
Yes,
in
sir.
those budgets, either on revenues or expenses.
Correct, yeah.
So it's, okay.
Now, if you looked at year-to-year collections, they would be equal. But as Carly said, it's a very astute point. The other reason why this was amended during the year was, if you recall, we had, as you well know, we went to the bond market using Elevate funds, so we made certain that we continued to keep this as accurate as possible as we were discussing our budget with analysts.
And also update the spreadsheet,
Yes.
so we know what's available.
And that was, a lot of the Elevate projects are starting to hit, and I think that, as a council, you guys are very interested in where Elevate stands month to month, not just one fiscal year to the next fiscal year. And so we try to keep that as updated as possible.
So now we go into, let's see, I went backwards, I apologize, into water and sewer, because that's been one for the last several years that we've actually seen a decline for many reasons. A lot of it being weather related, and fortunately this year was dry. So in terms of looking at the overall revenues, we were 102% of budget on water and sewer revenues. This is, again, progress for us, and we think that that number will continue to grow as our collections get better and as hopefully the weather continues, at least the pattern in recent months has been more dry than it has been in the past. On the water side, you can see that we were 101% of budget, and on the sewer side, 104% of budget.
Again, Carly, on the water and sewer budget, I assume when we construct whatever we think our projection is for the coming 12 months, your people have already factored into that whatever pricing increases we know are gonna take effect during that 12 months, right? That's baked in,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes.
So at this point, we are going to turn it back over. I'm going to turn it back over to Carly to talk about the expenditure side. Just a quick introduction to this. As I looked through it, You certainly see some things that stand out, the increases in salary and benefits, in terms of wages and overtime and holiday, not salary and benefits, but the salary line items of holiday pay, overtime, and wages, and auto fuel stand out. But otherwise, our team did a really good job of controlling the costs that you can control. And Carly, at this point, will go over that, and she'll be available to answer any questions that you may have.
So Carly, before you start.
Sure.
Let me ask one question that we can individually apply as we choose, either across expenses or revenues.
Mhm.
This 22 was an unusual year, inflation-wise.
I can, yes, I can stand behind that.
I haven't seen where it shook out, but I know we were tracking towards 9.5%.
We were 8.35 as of,
835 is what we're using.
as of the end of the fiscal year, yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, 8.35 is what we were tracking off for year to year as of 9/30. As far as what we will use, as far as like a CPI for the fiscal 24, that hasn't come out yet. We usually will do that in March
So do
of
y'all,
this year.
as we go into the budget finish line in September, August, September, as it's coming together, does your department consciously utilize some forecast of what inflation for the coming year is gonna be in either the expense side or the revenue side? And I say the revenue side because if it's 50% sales tax based, obviously, if whatever somebody's selling goes, do y'all use that? Coming into this year's budget, I know we talked about using
Recessionary
not a recession scenario, but essentially, we talked about having the option to utilize a flat or slightly
A
negative.
growth slowing,
Do your folks do that with the inflation piece as well or not? That's not a question with agenda.
No,
I
no,
just wanna understand.
I think that you have a number of financial professionals in the department that will pay attention to trend factors and will work to incorporate them into professional judgment forecasts. Yes. Do we have a set policy that we use a certain, issuing percentage? No, sir, we don't.
All right, gotcha. So there's no you don't blow a whistle and go, okay, all finance and accounting, we're adopting 7 3/4 inflation prognosis.
No, sir.
For the coming, okay.
I would like to, I want to give the blanket caveat here, is that all of these numbers, even the ones that the mayor presented a few minutes ago on the revenue side, these are all unaudited numbers. These are our fiscal year end. The department has worked in the past 3 months to wrap up year end and actually close the year out. These are the closed year amounts. They are unaudited. Our auditors will come into the field beginning at the end of this month. And so we should have complete final numbers post-audit towards the end of March. So please take that as you will. I do not, our department is extremely savvy when it comes to year-end work. And so I don't anticipate large swings. However, that is a caveat that does need to be out there for everybody to be aware of. Like the mayor said, the departments showed amazing restraint this year, and I can say that as of right now, all of the department work and the general fund as a whole is really only trending about $1.3 million over budget. When you think about the changes that they had to contend with throughout the year, the fuel costs increase, the supply increase costs, that's an amazing feat, I think. A couple of things that you will notice just within this table that's up here is that the two main offenders, like the mayor said, are going to be overtime and fuel. Overtime really can be made up of two main parties, and that's going to be police and fire. Fire was going to be the $930,000 over budget, and then police was going to be $655,000 over budget. That pretty much makes up the entire $1.5 million that's listed there. The rest of the departments, we had a couple of ins and outs, but those are the two that make up the bulk of that. As far as auto fuel and maintenance, we have really three main major vehicle users. And I think that if you will find that the work being done on the ground, those are going to be the main fuel users of the entire city. That's going to be fire, police, and then IPS at the time. IPS was the main one at that juncture, about 1.2 million total over budget. To Mr. Busby's point about how do we try to forecast that into the next fiscal year, we knew that fuel was going to be a problem. And so what we did is we took a 12-month average and then a 5-year average of all pricing. We took some spikes within that forecast analysis, and then we took current usage, and we tried to apply that pricing analysis to current usage to be able to get a fiscal 23 budgeted amount. We significantly increased fuel budgets for fiscal 23. I do not anticipate being over budget this year. If anything, because prices have remained pretty steady and pretty low comparatively, I anticipate some savings in that realm in fiscal 23. And as far as we're going, that's turning out to be accurate. Obviously, we're only a quarter of the year in, so take that for what you will. So, if you will,
Chief,
okay.
Chief Smith, how did you manage to win the prize on 900 grand of overtime?
Very hard. We had a lump sum of about 10,000 hours of additional cell time that, of course, we can't project. Cell time is a sick and injury, serious sick and injury leave. A lot of personnel plus going out on FMLA. We had a lot of babies born last year, a lot of surgeries and things of that nature that occurred. So that was one of our big
So that's overtime generated by absences?
Yes, sir.
Within
Absences.
the full force?
And 25% of this department can retire.
It's up a little bit higher than that right now.
So they have they have the most accumulated leave time, and you begin to see, and you see this everywhere, as employees, they begin to
Take it.
burn it and take it.
Well, with public safety, unlike other people, other departments that are in the RSA right now, our cell time is not, we can't use our cell time to buy time when we get ready to retire. So it is basically a use it or lose it. Unfortunately, I've got a lot of folks that need or have issues that need to be addressed.
And in most cases, we have to fill the position, as you all know.
The other is going to be on our training side. We're trying to maintain a high level of training to keep our personnel proficient in everything we do. And unfortunately, that costs money too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And the same that we did with fuel, I will say that we did the same type of analysis with fire on their overtime. And so I think that you will see in fiscal 2023 that fire's overtime should be a lot more in line with what budget actually is. I think the mayor used the term truth in advertising during the last budget cycle, so I do not anticipate that to be a question that's posed to the chief next year. These next couple of slides are just going to be the individual components of those expenditure categories. Here is going to be salaries, so this is going to be like the main base pay that you will see throughout all the departments, and you can see that we only use about 94% of overall budget. That's going to be due to vacancies. And I can tell you that the main cost savers within the vacancies are going to be IPS and the police department. This next one is the overtime that we talked about, so I've kind of already gone into that one, so I'm just going to skip right past. Continuing on, this is the auto fuel, have already kind of gone over this one too. If these, I call them speedometers, but these gauges that you'll see on these slides are just going to kind of show you like where we would like to end the year up. If it's red, obviously we're over budget. If it's green, we're going to be under budget. It just gives you a nice little visual of a quick flip through.
So,
Go ahead.
back up one slide.
Yes, sir?
Is that telling me that our auto and fuel maintenance was 202% above what we thought it was gonna be?
Yes, sir.
Double.
Significant. When you consider that percentage and that we only ended the year at 1.3 million over budget in the entire fund, That's why I say that the departments showed extreme restraint in their other spending. Because we made up, that's a big number, and we made up so much other ground by all of the other investment and expenditure areas to be able for that to not be as significant of a player as it could have been.
So we thought we were gonna spend 2.2 million
And we
on
spent
fuel and
4.3.
maintenance, and we spent 4.4.
But the good news is that this year's budget is 4.5
It's gonna be 4.5 actually.
million. And so if we go back to the 20, let's say the gas amounts go back to the 22 to 23 standard, you'll probably have 500 to $1 million in savings this year. But we just, that's the thing that I really enjoyed my 17 years with the council, and really 21 when I was on the council, is that we tend to budget off prior year expenses and revenues. And so it keeps us in line, and you can see Carly and her team, you know, when she came to me and said, we're gonna budget this, you know, it's not the most fun thing in the world, but it's, you know, it's the right thing to do. And it'll set us up for fiscal 23.
We think we added 2.7 million this last budget cycle to the fuel, and yeah, it's not fun to do because it cuts into your flexibility. But at the same time, I think that we'll be extremely thankful come this time next
Well,
year.
do we factor in what we know? So for example, I'm gonna burlesque the example a little bit to make the point, but if we got caught unawares in a particular year and fuel spiked to $4 a gallon, but already by the time it was on us to formulate next year's budget, it was already back down to 2. Do we apply some common sense windage there and say, we could budget on $4 fuel, but let's budget on 3?
We do, and we will actually present a number of options with that exact type of analysis when we're doing full budget negotiations in June, July. And we'll pick, like, do you want to go with a 12-month average? Do you want to go with a 5-year average? Do you want to go with a 3-year average? We will definitely and considering spikes within, but yeah, we'll present all those options.
We use roughly 1 million gallons a year of fuel. We're very heavy vehicle operation.
So just continuing on, another major factor is maintenance contracts, and this is where I think you can see that departments have a little bit more control day to day, month to month with their spending. And I think that the mayor tasked the departments around June and July when we were going into the budget that possibly recessionary pressures could be coming, and to please negate spending as much as possible. And you can see that they really did take that charge to be able to produce this kind of outcome. And I also want to give another shout out to the departments, in that they do not look at budgets as available spending. They look at budgets as trying to project what could be spent or what possibly needs to be spent to operate, but they don't look at it as blank checks. They really do show great restraint when it comes to fluctuations within the year.
And I know the day is long, but this one right here is one I'm really proud of, because as you can imagine, our utility cost went up. And it shows that our departments, beginning about May and June, as we begin to see those spikes, we really were able to contain on that side, only to be at 101% of budget. And they laugh at me sometimes when I tell them turn off the lights, but we did a lot of things to contain costs. So I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, absolutely.
I'm proud of this.
Within the year, Alabama Power raised rates on us 3% at one point, and then we'll do another 5% at the end of the year. So yes, that to show that we basically hit right at budget. That's pretty
Did
phenomenal.
we reciprocate on their water bill?
That's a council decision. I'm more than happy to negotiate that with you.
We'll let you lead those negotiations.
That's called passing the buck right there. So this is going to be like all of the other spending that the departments have. This will be like their travel and education, their repairs and supplies. Again, the very items that they have control over day to day. And again, I think that you can see their constraint when it comes to their spending.
What are the biggies in other operating?
That's gonna be repairs and supplies, that's going to be, their travel and education, books, dues and subscriptions, things of that nature. And that really that's going to, conclude the general fund, and so we can move into,
Carl,
yes, sir?
a question, did you say, I'm still getting all this right in my head, the 22 budget ended in September, right?
Yes,
So we're looking at right now that whole year.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
So when it says December, I guess my confusion is, but this is the FY budget from October of 21 to September 30 of 22, correct? That's the 22 budget.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm just saying when it says December year to date. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, that needs to, so, I mean,
That's
so.
what I mean, and it doesn't take much to confuse me, but
No,
that's what I'm confused about.
So the fiscal, you'll see the fiscal 2022,
Mhm.
that December year date is the run date. And so we will run all the, because we know that we closed the year in December.
But that basically is through September 30.
Yes, sir. It's all actuals through September 30th with all of the accruals in place that we can determine through December. I'll change that formatting because you're right, that is a little confusing.
But just, I don't know, like I said, it didn't take me much to get confused.
No. We can definitely change it. So onto water and sewer. I think that the mayor, was clearly able to talk about the positives within the water and sewer revenue side of things. This is going to be the water and sewer expense side of things. One of the things that you'll see is the exact same picture is that auto fuel is going to be the main problem. Water and sewer is a large fuel user as well, fuel and auto maintenance. On my page.
Is,
There it is. Yes, sir.
so that, on the salaries and benefits up here on the top line,
Yes, sir.
is that all adjusted? I mean, they had 13.6 to spend, spent 12.4, check.
Yes, sir.
Is that all adjusted? You know, we did some moving around pieces and parts in departments.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So because this is all September 30, 2022 year end, this does not reflect realignment. This is prior to realignment.
Okay.
So fiscal 23 is kind of like the start of the realignment budgetary process. So this is going to be old IPS, basically,
Before the change.
before the changes.
So if we came in 1.2 million under budget on salaries and benefits,
Mhm.
out of a 13.6 expectation, so not 8 or 9%. Why is that because we didn't hire
They're
8 or
all,
9% of the people that we had budgeted for?
yes, sir, those are all going to be due to vacancies and vacancies throughout the year. You can have people that embodied a position from October 1 through December 1, and then that one was vacant again until June 1. So it's going to be those vacancies as they ebb and flow, not necessarily just one vacancy throughout the whole year.
And I know we've got a grant meeting I've got to go to. Right now with Shonda and her team, we're looking at position control, where we've had long-term vacancies in positions. Are those positions needed? And so we are doing that calculus. A lot within water and sewer were specialty positions we just could not hire. And y'all helped us tremendously. As you recall, you made some changes for us that we think are going to pay dividends. But there were specialty positions, plant operating positions, and assistant plant operating positions that we just had to leave vacant because there was no one to fill those key slots. There were a couple of administrative positions that we did hold open throughout the course of the year because we knew we were going through the realignment, and that would allow the new director, in this case Kimberly, to be able to make those hires.
And there are a lot of times when I see overtime that's over budget, that I will look at the corresponding salary savings, because a lot of times you can tell that there's a reason that they're having to hire overtime is because they're not fully staffed. I think that's a very clear picture here. And so again, we'll just kind of go through the individuals. We just kind of talked about the salary issue. So the overtime is slightly over budget. I think that kind of shows that they were trying to hire and backfill with some of the overtime earning positions. And then that one with auto fuel and maintenance, we kind of already covered. Continuing on, you can see their discretionary spending with maintenance contracts, the utility aspect, and then again with their other spending is all going to be under budget. And it shows that department restraint in spending when necessary. But that is pretty much the end of everything. This, I will wrap up with one global viewpoint, is that, as the mayor mentioned, total revenues for the general fund, which is kind of what I think people will look to when it comes to surplus transfer ability. Overall general fund revenues are over budget by about $23 million. Expenditures are only over budget by $1.3 million. And so the look that will give you for what the possible surplus transfer could be moving forward is extremely rosy.
This is recorded, right? Would you back up and say the number that it could possibly be? That's great, you're good. That was good, Brian.
I'm always gonna caveat that,
There's
because I'm
a lot-
gonna
there's a lot of
come back and
outside.
it's not
I
gonna
like
be that,
that.
y'all be like, but you said.
But you said it was possible.
It is possible, it is very.
There's a lot of stuff that's possible.
It is very possible, and I will say that there are internal pools that start to happen right about now about what that final number would be. If anybody wants to get in on the pool, it's $20 to enter.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just saying about time.
But that is all I
That's
have.
good. But you think, in the best case scenario, it could be $22 million?
In the best case
I mean,
scenario,
whatever you just said, it could be.
I-
For the audit.
so I will say that
What is that number? I don't think you said it.
I'm entering the pool. I
Oh,
will go ahead and give you my
okay.
pool
What
guess.
is that number?
I'm entering the pool at 19.7.
We'll take it.
That's inside knowledge. You might want to take.
Yeah.
That's after the audit and everything.
That's after everything. I actually
Wow.
think I'm heading up.
That's good. We will, John. We're gonna pave a lot of streets with that. Any other questions?
No, sir, Mr. Vice Chairman.
What was that?
I move that we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, that'd be seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.